Kamala Harris on election loss. Whoa.
Scared about like us turning into Nazi Germany.
This shit is about survival for a lot of people.
He doesn't stand for women. He doesn't stand for people of color. So honestly, I think Trump being president, it just means like the end of all of us having rights.
It's black people, white people, immigrants that's all poor. That shit about everybody vote who was poor.
When was America ever great?
MAGA folks want to turn the clock back on certain things that aren't progressive that I'm not in support of, so.
I feel like I have no words right now, to be honest.
What are you thinking, sir?
I'm not the biggest Kamala Harris fan. I'm not a fan of her stances on Palestine and her history as a prosecutor, but I feel like even among black people, nobody was really that crazy about Kamala Harris. I know that a lot of my friends didn't vote because of that. They didn't vote because of the situation in Palestine, but we can't afford a Trump presidency. So I'm nervous for what the future has to hold, but you know.
It doesn't mean that things can't get better.
It's like,
I think the people.
I don't know what they were. I wish I paid more attention, but just to know, you know what they were providing, and how everything was going down. Because like, I just don't have enough information to say anything.
Or moving in one direction despite the fact the government may be moving in another direction.
Yeah.
And I always have faith in the people because
There's still laws intact. Like, this is still democracy. Yeah, no, the world is not gonna go to an end.
No, it ain't gonna be the end of the world. It's gonna be the stop of the progression of some, and it's gonna be the spark of the progression of others that are already ahead.
All right, we are at Howard University. It's a pretty prestigious HBCU here in Washington, D.C.
So historically black college, right, just means historically black. It doesn't mean only black. Actually, historically black colleges are the only universities within the history of the U.S. that don't have a history of discriminating based on color, creed, culture, and it's really cool that it was founded by Union General Oliver Otis Howard, 1867. It was the daughters of those Union soldiers who were white women who were the first students.
Yeah. And Kamala Harris was supposed to deliver what appeared to be like an address to the nation or a victory speech at the amphitheater right here, but
you won't hear from the vice president tonight.
Seems like everybody's walking away at the same time. She currently has, I think, 210 electoral votes, and Trump has 240, something like that.
So
spirits are pretty
election
low.
night.
Hopes are definitely dwindling. So we're going to talk to a few people and see how they feel and why they left the speech.
it's not looking too hot right now. It's not over, but you know, it's just.
I don't feel like I want to go to school tomorrow. We're both PhD students, so I wanted to work at the Department of Education. Big Republican push is to get rid of that.
And I'm going to close the Department of Education and move education back to the states.
For the uninformed viewer, like, what's their motif behind, you know, taking away the elements of the Department of Education?
I think they think it's like a waste of money and resources.
What do you study, man?
I study U.S. history.
What's your favorite chapter of U.S.
Really?
history?
I guess what most people consider like the Gilded Age and Progressive Era. So that's like between 1877 and like maybe like 1919, if I guess I.
That was literally like 100 years ago.
So Reconstruction.
Well, Reconstruction is before that. That's 1865 to 77, and then the Gilded Age and Progressive Era is right after that.
There was an era of terror inflicted after Reconstruction.
Progressive era.
Yeah,
It's weird
so
saying
that's
progressive era
why
when
I said it's
the whole thing is
known by
progressive era.
most people as the Gilded Age and Progressive Era, but honestly, I study African American history. That's my specialty, and that's considered the nadir of American race relations, and that's like the darkest period of like race relations in American history.
Yeah, because the South Carolina State Senate was like what, half black in 1880.
Yeah,
people don't
during
understand
Reconstruction.
that.
Yeah.
And so, what do you think is the most important element of U.S. history to teach young people, black or white?
I think it's that U.S. history is not centered around a bunch of great men like the presidents. You know, there's a lot more grassroots history, like history of the people, and you know, it's not just say like learning about like white people. It's you know, everybody, Native Americans, African Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans, like all those stories matter. Like you got to understand all of it, and you really won't know the history of the country if you're not familiar with any of that.
I think that the slogan "Make America Great Again" calls into question as it relates to people of African descent throughout the diaspora. When was America ever great? Determine what was the time frame that you would recollect that there was actually equal opportunity that was provided to all. And so I think if you're looking at the Reconstruction period, which was then followed by the Black Codes, whatever gains that occurred during the Reconstruction will eventually reverse.
You feel like America was great during Reconstruction?
I think that if you
When was that?
move a knife from 7 inches.
What's that? That's in these last 100 years, I swear. Reconstruction. Is it not? No, maybe it's further. Ish. little further. Okay. So, how do they know these things? You know, they only know of reading. They don't know by living in the time.
Out of my back to 5 inches out of my back, and then consider that to
I
be
think it's the
progress.
best
I
ever.
don't think that's actually progress. Progress is actually trying to heal the wound.
The reason that I continually bring up the Reconstruction period is because that was the last time the US actually attempted to implement a federal reparations program, not like the Uhuru-style interpersonal $5 donation model.
Can I have $5?
Are you serious?
But administered by a governmental organization called the Freedmen's Bureau, which no longer exists. Reconstruction basically began the same day the Confederate Army lost the Civil War to the Union, giving the federal government control over the southern states, where approximately 4 million slaves had just been freed. The Freedmen's Bureau was tasked with helping them integrate into society as free men, which obviously would be quite difficult given the fact that none of them had any land or any possessions. So they began by giving the men voting rights and enacting their famous 40 acres and a mule allotment to newly emancipated slaves. By 1875, in states like South Carolina, there was actually a higher proportion of black lawmakers holding office than there is today. And for a moment, it looked as if things were heading in a positive direction. But then, a small group of former Confederate soldiers who had formed a social club in Tennessee had an idea. That idea was to target, terrorize, harass, lynch, and assassinate black politicians and anyone, black or white, who even considered voting for them. This group was called the KKK, whose plan was made possible during the 1876 primaries, during which, for whatever reason, the Freedmen's Bureau decided to withdraw troops from polling stations in the South, where they'd previously been protecting black voters from racial violence. The day the Bureau pulled the troops, the Klan put their plan into motion, and everyone knows what they did. I don't find it necessary to bring up individual instances of grotesque violence for a dramatic effect or anything like that, but it's important to note that the original purpose of the Klan was to terrify black voters into staying home during Election Day, and to run black politicians out of town with threats of violence. And it worked. By the elections of 1878, there was almost no black voters in Georgia, despite them composing a third of the state's population. And it's been undoubtedly proven by now that the then Democrat parties in states like Mississippi and Louisiana actually hired the Klan to terrorize black voters. And so by 1880, Reconstruction was over. The Freedmen's Bureau had closed. Every state in the South was under neo-Confederate leadership, who swiftly passed something called the Black Codes, which limited black Americans' ability to own property, conduct business, own firearms, and travel freely.
What?
Was under Neo-Construction was over. The Freedmen's Bureau had
This
closed.
is during the
Every
Reconstruction
state in
era?
the South was under Neo-Confederate leadership, who swiftly passed something called the Black Codes, which limited black Americans'
This is after?
ability to
This is
own
before?
property, conduct business, own
Fuck, I
firearms.
forgot what was been done.
voters.
What?
And so by 1880, Reconstruction was over. The Freedmen's Bureau had closed. Every state in the South was under Neo-Confederate leadership, who swiftly passed something called the Black Codes, which limited black Americans' ability to own property, conduct business, own firearms, and travel freely. It also enforced strict sundown laws related to vagrancy, which set the foundation for chain gangs, forced labor camps, and the prison industrial complex. While the federal government was initially horrified at the unraveling of Reconstruction in the southern states, they would ultimately side with them in 1902 during Plessy versus Ferguson, defending segregation under the dubious separate but equal premise. The following 60-plus years are referred to as the Jim Crow era, which officially ended in 1964 when the Civil Rights Act was passed.
This Civil Rights Act is a challenge.
I ain't gonna lie. All that shit he just said about that was the most brain dead shit I've ever heard. I ain't gonna lie. It's not even like, it was like, why would you, like, imagine being on the same planet and having to, that's crazy. Having to, like, fight for a right when we're both the same. That don't make sense.
To all of us to eliminate the last vestiges of injustice in our beloved country.
For some perspective, that means that the average current 22-year-old black American's grandmother or grandfather was in 8th grade when Jim Crow formally ended in '64. So the legacy of Jim Crow and the unkept promise of Reconstruction is still something that's very much alive.
And the destruction of different levels of what we consider successful black towns and cities, in which they use the highway bill to be able to cut through and destroy those particular communities.
You believe in modern reparations?
I definitely believe in reparations. I think that it's something that's old, just as there's been
reparations is consequences.
Whether it be the Japanese who were interned during World War II, whether it be levels of monies that were provided to people who are Jewish during the Holocaust. I think there's always a need to provide some level.
The making of amends for a wrong one has done. Huh? What was that? The making of amends for a wrong one has done. I'm gonna read that again because maybe I'm reading that wrong. The making of amends for a wrong one has done. By paying money to or otherwise helping those who have been wronged. Okay, so it is consequences.
Reparation when harm has been done. The question would be, what might be the right way and process to do that?
Well, I mean, if it was to be distributed on an individual level, that calls into question also financial literacy among the recipients.
Excuse me? What was that?
English? And it would be, what might be the right way and process to do that?
Well, I mean, if it was to be distributed on an individual level, that calls into question also financial literacy among the recipients. Because
I think that it was done systemically, and so you need a systemic policy to address systemic racism and discrimination.
Yes. Would that look like more educational investment?
I think education investment would definitely be a key component of it, but I think that at this particular juncture, there's additional levels of discussions that are still being ongoing about the fact that it's needed. And to me, unequivocally, it is not only needed, but it is owed. And subsequently, we just have to get to a place to be able to figure out what might be the best ways to be able to implement it.
Yeah, I agree, man. I appreciate you. You're from the south or the east coast?
Pardon me?
From the south?
From the east coast.
Okay, great.
What's your name?
Andrew Callahan.
Give me a thing for
it's and just like if you look up Channel 5.
Give me a second. I'll have you write it down. Yeah. How about that?
What's up, guys? Here at Channel 5, we want you to be safe,
This
whether
is
it be
the
on the streets of
same
Washington,
thing?
D.C. during the
The
election, or
app?
just surfing the web from your phone or on the computer. That's why we use NordVPN.
Oh,
NordVPN
I mean,
allows
it's
you to
an
set
app.
your IP address to any country on Earth. And we know that in many countries, the government controls the
Not
flow
that
of
news
information
app. That's
on
what I was
the
thinking
internet. So you can set your IP address to various countries throughout the world, such as Venezuela, or Poland, or Argentina, or El Salvador, or South Africa, or Kazakhstan. And you can see what it's like to surf the web as the person who lives in that country and is inside their data chamber. Boom, you're in there. NordVPN does so many things, but one of my favorite features
their
they have
data
is their
chamber.
threat protection, which allows you to safeguard your personal files and make sure they don't get taken by sketchy hackers and
Sounds
people who
spicy.
distribute malware and try to trick you out your hard drive files. And I have more great news. NordVPN's having a massive Black Friday sale, so if you want to use my link, www.nordvpn.com/channel5, you can get a huge discount on a 2-year plan plus 4 free additional months. And guess what? If you don't like it, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. Again, just go to www.nordvpn.com/channel5. I'm going to put the link in the description and a pinned comment. All right, guys. Back to the streets.
As I walked through the Kamala Harris rally, most people had accepted that she probably wouldn't win the presidency.
I'm really disappointed because I didn't have enough time to register because Texas you have to register before 3 weeks before. So I had to vote as a DC resident.
But still, some people held on to a sliver of hope.
Hey, we're coming back.
We're down 20. We're down 20. We're down 20. It's 210, 230. We almost back.
We're down 20.
Look. Kamala, she needs to win Wisconsin,
My parlay so
Pennsylvania,
live. My parlay so
Georgia,
live.
and maybe Michigan. And we're in there. Nobody give no fuck about Nevada or AZ.
Fuck Arizona.
Fuck all that shit. We respect the people out there, but nah, like this is what matters. It's about what matters right now. We've been out here stressing all night.
We need
This might be the second bottle tonight. Like, we out here. But nah, look, I don't enjoy what Trump did to the Central 5.
He spent $85,000 on a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for our execution.
Any 3 of us could have been a Central 5 in Manhattan. If that's how you gonna represent a large portion of America, I can't get behind that because that's the demographic that I'm a part of.
So you feel like on a moral character level, he's just bogus?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Everything Trump stands for, he doesn't stand for women, he doesn't stand for people of color. So honestly, I think Trump being president, it just means like the end of all of us having rights and being seen as human beings. And I feel like with Harris as president, her goal is to see everyone as people and help everyone.
When it comes to voting for the president, right, you're voting for someone who's going to select the heads of the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Commerce.
Yeah.
And I, believe that, especially with her, she would choose more qualified individuals.
I think as we get even closer and closer to like the end of the timeline within which we can change the effects of climate change, another 4 years of Trump as president would be horrible for that. It would be horrible for the Middle East. It would be horrible for women's rights, for protections for the LGBTQI. I don't think a Harris presidency would be perfect, but I think in every way possible it would be better than Trump.
And that's the whole issue. I feel like even among black people, nobody was really that crazy about Kamala Harris, but It was just the fact that she was not Trump. And at the end of the day, you can't really run on being not Trump. You have to be more than that. You have to do more for everybody, not just black people, but everybody in general. Class issues matter a lot more, and people don't talk about class issues. People don't talk about imperialism. There's a lot of stuff that people don't talk about, and they focus on the culture wars, but the culture is still very important. Me coming from like a Caribbean community, I'm really worried about like how people are going to attack the Haitian community going forward. I really don't like it. The cats and dogs shit is bullshit. You know, we all know it's lies, but regardless of who would have won, our country still would have been in crisis, and especially what's going on abroad in Palestine, in the Middle East, things would have not have been all well and good, but at the same time, with a Trump presidency, it makes it so much worse. But like I said, if Kamala had won, it still not would have been like an amazing outcome.
How much do you think the Biden administration's policy on Israel affected the current outcome today?
I definitely think that Kamala Harris capitulating to right-wing framework on issues is really what alienated people like the people that we know who were just like, absolutely not. I'm not gonna, like, what are you talking about? You're gonna finish the wall. Like, it just doesn't make sense. What are you talking about? We have to tolerate lower grocery prices for a genocide in Palestine.
I know that a lot of my friends, they didn't vote because of the situation in Palestine. I personally think it was still worth it to vote.
Facts. Trump presidency's nothing good, bro.
Channel 5 Live Worldwide, Hollywood and Vine.
Fuck the authority, Channel 5 News.
Channel 55. We don't fuck with custers. And 5 is the best number.
Next question. Did the world end 4 years ago? No. Okay then.
Is that when? But I don't know.